Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Wish you a happy, healthy start to this nice little Saturday morning over here from actually a very sunny Helsinki, Finland. It's turning around to springtime, I think, and I actually really dread it right now. The reason being because as soon as the sun comes up, I can't sleep, and I absolutely love my sleep, and I absolutely need my sleep, and well, I guess I'll just have to give that up for the next few months. Anyways, with that said, I would like to wish you the best, and the happiest once again, if I already haven't, because I've already forgotten. I had a little bit of a lack of sleep last night, if you can't guess already. Anyways, what else do we want to be talking about right now? Oh man, we got a lot of things to be talking about because Bitcoin sideways as fuck. We're going to do a nice clickbait title today. Bitcoin, urgent emergency, sideways range, not much happening in the short-term timeframes. Higher-term timeframes, however, are still looking more or less good, more or less healthy over the long term, but that is long-term, of course. Although I would say that within this next 2 weeks of price action, we actually have a pretty damn good setup here. So it is one of those times, and I actually want to take a little bit of a second here to kind of slow down for a moment to explain this, because a lot of the time you'll see this. When, and it could be any asset, by the way, but we'll just pick Bitcoin right now, where you see the asset is essentially going through a long-form consolidation, or in this case, I'd say a medium-term time frame consolidation, and everyone kind of starts to lose interest once again. And you see that right now. I can see it through my metrics on YouTube, for example. I can see it on other great creators metrics as well, and you just see kind of like a lack of interest amongst most social media venues in general. And what does that typically denote? It typically denotes, well, that we are pretty damn mature within this formation here, and I would be looking for resolutions somewhat soon. It's no secret that a lot of the time when no one's looking, shit just fucking happens. One of the things that my mentor used to teach me, or used to just repeat ad nauseum, was something along the lines of, don't short a dull market. It's like, or what was it? Don't get caught shorting a dull market, something like that. And it essentially means this. It essentially means, hey, when no one's watching, you typically do see those big moves, those big breakouts, and that's really the time to be paying attention, because you likely do get rewarded for it. Problem is, it's more or less boring because, well, most people can't deal with fucking sideways range. Albeit for traders, this is, more or less a gift from the trading gods, as we have these massive ranges here. And if you are a range trader right now, or especially an options trader, this is really the time to be going to work. And if you're a trend trader, well, this is the time to be taking a little bit of a snooze, I suppose, and perhaps making a setup, obviously. So we'll be talking about that. And what else do we want to talk about before we move on? Yes, we do have our sale going on for our 3rd-year anniversary here. It's a 3-year and I think 5-day anniversary now. Yeah, it's the 20th day of March. So I don't want to say massive love from me to you, and hopefully back as well. But if it is unrequited, that's okay. That's why we have the 20% off. And with that said, I do really want to take a second to express massive gratitude here, just because this channel, doing this whole thing, and in creating this community, has been I would honestly say the highlight of my life thus far, even better than becoming a professional trader, just because this is bigger than myself at this point. And I just, all the relationships that have been formed, all the stories that have been told, I mean, is like something that I think about very, very often, and that I hold very dear to myself. So I just want to say a massive thank you in a more sincere tone, just because that is, I mean, it's been the pleasure of the last 3 years for myself, and I don't really have any plans to stop, barring some sort of massive catastrophe, which you never know, man. You never know. It's a crazy life that we lead. Anyways, I do want to say that if you are interested in one of those programs, especially more expensive and more covering programs as well, like the TA program and the options program, make sure that you watch the videos that are on the Krown application over here, which you can find to link in the description below. By the way, it's 100% free in case you already haven't heard. And and those videos are going to explain to you, who they're for, who they're not for. I really don't want people to get into these programs if they're not going to, be successful with them, to have no intention to sell someone something that they don't actually fucking need. And for most people, literally 90+% of people, just watching the videos on YouTube is probably going to get them about where they want to be anyways. So make sure that you're that type of person. Make sure that you have enough, time to actually invest in these things. It's going to take a long fucking time. And there's obviously no guarantee at the end of the day as well. You will have to put in the work yourself. Now, of course, I am, going a little bit out of my way to kind of dissuade a lot of people from doing this. At the same time, that is a bit of a disservice to the people who would be successful with it. So, it's a careful balance here. But of course, that person is going to make the decision for themselves. You're an adult. If you're watching this, you're an adult. You can make that decision for yourself. And so I'll leave it off right there. And again, just watch the videos. They're going to go into much more detail than I will right now, just because it's not very appropriate, and it's probably enough shilling for one day. Anyways, what do we see on the dashboard right here? We actually see plenty of things right now. Bitcoin dominance actually did come down, which this would be the bottom side of the range. So it would be very much relevant to check it out today to see if this was still looking like a macro low. Could it be that we actually see continuation to the downside overall? If it does, then this would be a massive pivot, and that actually would really be favoring altcoin Bitcoin parents. But of course, without, I'm just blindly looking at it right now. I want to actually see the chart itself before we say anything that is contrary to the general notion of this market right now. Fear and greed index also popping up a few points from yesterday's today as well, kind of hanging around the low 70s, now popping up to about 75. Market is more or less optimistic in general, but we're not really seeing any of that like frothy behavior in the 90 plus region. On top of that, we do see open interest also coming down a little bit from yesterday to today, but more or less holding the range. And this very much does correlate with the price action range, which is actually what you want to see as well. And we can actually come up with a range between open interest and, of course, price action now, which we'll get into once we get into the market data tab. Top 10 coins, top 10 worst coins. Actually very interesting to see a lot of the 2017 shit coins up here once again. BitTorrent, if you remember that one, up 82 and 0.75% almost. PunDX, which that's a very interesting name. Tron, Hollow, Digibot, I believe all these are 2017, 2016-ish region. And Siacoin there too, which is incredibly interesting to see. And Ocean Protocol, I think, was there as well. On the other side, actually, I think we're seeing a lot of the DeFi coins over here. Anyways, as always, when it comes to DeFi stuff, look, there's actually a lot of interesting things going on there. And the more and more research that I do into it, albeit, very minimal, there's a lot of interesting stuff. But what I would say, though, is don't fucking go to me for DeFi. Or at least I want to be very open and transparent about it. Look, I'm not doing like the really, really hard research into it. Go check out Elio Trades. That's the guy who knows what he's talking about. He even has his own NFT now, which is incredibly interesting, but I'll let him explain that one for himself. And again, you're either an altcoin person or not, I suppose. So with all of that in mind, it's very interesting, yes, but with all these sort of hype phases, there's going to be some shitty projects and there's going to be some great projects, just like in 2017, right? We saw mostly shitty projects and then a few humongous winners. I mean, think about it. Link was born in about 2017, 2018, alongside a few other big winners, and they have certainly proven themselves as mainstays in this market. Now, the majority of coins do fall off, of course, so you do got to be careful. But with that in mind, let's go to the market data tab and see what we got going on over here. Okay, here's what I really, really like. So as Bitcoin kind of has like this low volatility hang around the prior all-time high, mostly just going sideways and kind of crawling its way up, we see that the funding rate has gone for a complete reset, again, trending down all the way from our highs in early March. And this is really, 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 really good here, because what you would expect if this is, essentially going to turn around and be a full-on reversal to the downside, which I still don't see any signs of that. I think it's incredibly obvious here when you look at the line chart actually on the Krown trading app. You'd expect to see it incredibly high, but that's not what we see. We actually see it coming back down to parity on the global funding rate. You can see that the average of them all is, actually just above 0.01%. So with that in mind, you're really not paying all that much to hold longs. In fact, on some exchanges yesterday, I believe OKX and maybe it was FTX as well for a little bit of time, you're actually getting paid to hold longs, although, of course, that changes every 8 hours. So it's not going to be like, for forever. But ultimately, again, just another signal that as Bitcoin does essentially grind out its prior all-time high, do have to still remain with a bullish bias here, at least for myself. On top of that, we do see that price action obviously just maintaining the uptrend, having a nice higher low structure here, alongside open interest doing the same thing, even making new all-time highs alongside Bitcoin's all-time high about last week or the week prior to that. So more importantly, with all of this, I am looking at this as more or less a continuation signal, as Bitcoin does have a nice consolidation at a high level, which is typically a very healthy thing. Now, of course, what could go wrong within that? We'll get into the actual price action charts themselves. As always, it needs to be an area of which those sort of biases go by the wayside, and we can turn on to bearish, which I'd absolutely love to be, but still not necessarily seeing it myself. So just kind of cruising around here. There's one other slightly concerning thing. It'd be the premium of the futures of our spot price action over here. It is, quite exaggerated, to be fair. Not as bad as what we saw on March 13th high, but this is, a little bit exaggerated here. So this would be the only thing that that is a little bit more concerning. But I should also say that this would be a very preliminary indication, certainly not actionable in and of itself, similar to the fear and greed index. It's like, this is not actually, like, if you just fucking look at this, you'd be broke since I think October or November, right? It's not actionable in and of itself. It's a bit of a warning signal, but several other things need to happen as well. And of course, I should also also direct you, or at least if you are interested in kind of judging the macro high, or at least my sort of methodologies in kind of judging the next macro high. I actually have a video on that I uploaded, I believe, about 2 weeks now. It's still very much relevant, and I can just spoil the surprise for you as well. There's none of them are actually have actually signaled off just yet. So with all of that said, let's go into the price action charts themselves. Let's see. We can start off with the secondary charts today. I do want to start off with, of course, CME. CME did close their weekly yesterday, so that's going to greatly influence spot price action for Sunday closure coming in about, I don't know, 20, like 30 hours or something like that. And CME did close on new all-time highs for the weekly. Now, a lot of people are going to say this is a Jesus Christ dildo Krown, and we must be going down. Perhaps yes. I mean, doji dildos are typically a sign of indecision, perhaps even reversal, but the conditions for reversal are actually very, 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 very easy to get right here. And all it is taking out the low side of this. In this case, that'd be 53,475 on CME. Now, spot price action has not necessarily done the same thing itself just yet, so we can't really say that yet. But if we were to look at the low side of this weekly dildo, about 53,221 as well. So around the same area, anyways. And this is obviously only going to be actionable when CME opens back up. Late tomorrow. I believe it is 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. It might be 6 now with the time change, but I don't know how these daylight saving times work. Now that I don't really live in America, as in Finland we actually don't have it until I think like another 10 days or so. It's at the end of March, I believe. Anyways, with that said, I do like this overall. I still do favor the upside here. Momentum oscillators are actually increasing still. So we actually didn't see this yesterday. So this is actually a good follow through as well. MACD histogram on the weekly has officially increased momentum once again. And again, this is increasing momentum as Bitcoin is, well, quite literally closing on new all-time highs. DMI Plus is also in, more or less a good posturing here. Yes, the ADX is very, very aggressive, way the fuck up in the 80s. So, Bitcoin probably does reach for its next, its next major pullback. Probably if this next move plays out, but that would also imply next move as well. DMI Plus, again, very much dominate here, but I want to see this one get a positive slope coming into Sunday open for pre-market, and then I want to see the ADX continue as well. If we get that, very, 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 very likely Bitcoin does actually gun for a new all-time high within the next week to week and a half, I would say. Maybe 2 weeks, something like that, but overall things would be looking good. And I should also denote that the bi-weekly closed, actually did not close yesterday. It will close next week, but technically speaking, for the information that we do have right now, I mean, this still looks very good to me. Anytime that I see something that's trending above the top side Krown band in this case, which is both synonymous on CME and spot price action, I look at that as trend in motion. Now, bi-weekly doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin is going to have like a 4-hour fucking pullback, right? So have to be very, very careful when we get back down to lower term timeframes, because Bitcoin is more or less ranging right now. But on the whole, I still look at this as likely to continue, very likely to new all-time highs next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even less than that. So with all of that in mind, I do still like the higher term timeframes. I have no real reason to be bearish on them. Of course, we go to the monthly and and quarterly, and just any other higher term time frame, it even gets better and better, to be fair. Here's your monthly Bitcoin officially trending above the top side Krown band for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 month in a row. Yep, it can't happen for that long, of course. And more importantly, we did see the condition fulfilled for the 200 bands that we overlaid at the beginning of this month, where every time the Bitcoin has closed above the topside Krown band, it is always, 100% of the time for the history that we do see, tested the topside Krown band on that next successful month. And in this case, when Bitcoin first opened up this month, it was trading around like what, $50,000, and that topside Krown band was not where it currently is. It was right around, or right maybe even below $40,000. So I was saying, we still have a threat of a pullback here, but ultimately long term, very much bullish. Now with the advent of this rally back up mostly to the prior all-time high at about $6,000, we'll call it. You can see that this has been pulled up quite significantly all the way to $44,000. And, for what it's worth, I consider this pretty much touching to begin with. Although, there would be about $1,000 delta between those two. It's close enough in this case, at least for myself. And, with still another 10, 11 days of the trading month left, I would say that it still has a chance to even get that condition fully met anyways. So all of that does look good to me. And I think that this becomes even more interesting on the quarterly, which we will have a new closure at the end of this month, actually. So I'm only get 4 of these a year, of course, so it is kind of a big deal. Albeit, again, we don't really have too much price action history on this one, but I do want to denote that, yes, this is actually going to be the second successive close that we actually would even have above the topside Krown band. And what's very interesting about this right here is its long-term implication, because if Bitcoin does close anywhere around here, or anywhere above $55,000, I'd say, what's going to happen here? Well, the topside Krown band is rising up incredibly aggressive right now. We've seen it go from October closure to December closure, rise up up literally 50% from about 20,000 bucks to 35,000 bucks. So it would be relevant coming into this next open in April that it would probably rise up somewhere around 50, maybe even more than 15,000 bucks. But 15,000 bucks above the $35,000 current upside would be 50,000 bucks. So 50,000 bucks. Sorry, I'm using 15 and 50 always sound very similar to each other, but it would be 15,000 bucks delta. So that'd be 50,000 bucks, somewhere around the open of April, which would imply that Bitcoin actually sets in a major base above 50,000 bucks. As you can see over here, once it starts trending above, I mean, those bases are, pretty well set. So with all of that in mind, I do look at this as really fucking powerful long term. Of course, momentum oscillators, while we don't really have much information on them, they would be interpreted as more or less good. But again, very, very young in their history right here, so not all that relevant. Anyways, let's go into the low term timeframes now. So again, higher term timeframes really haven't changed my tune on these at all. Still, conditions are all the same. We can talk about upside targets, of course, or areas of interest. Let's see what we got right here. Still looking at this as more or less a cup and handle. It's even kind of wedging the handle into some sort of an ascending triangle. It looks like, I mean, you got your higher lows as long as Bitcoin's above 55,500. So I really have no reason to be bearish on medium or higher term timeframes as long as we're especially above there. And that would have a measure move based off this reaccumulation somewhere around the 2-spot extension over here and the 3-spot 618 from the prior major base from about 30,000 to 40,000. So I really like the influence on this, and that would be about 69,000 bucks. Anywhere around there would be about fine, with areas of interest along the way at, I believe, about 64, 65, which we'll now document in the lower term timeframes. So let's go over here to our other charts, of which, hey, let's get it going like that. So again, it is a weekend, so I really like to refrain from making more calls, if you will. I fucking hate that term. Predictions, if you will. Yeah, some predictions. How about that? Over the weekend, I just feel like weekend price action is notorious for being kind of floaty, and a lot of the time, I just don't find that my regular sort of methods of analysis. I feel like they just have a lower hit rate. They do technically still hit a lot of the time, but instead of what is typically like a 66 to 69% hit rate, I'd say it goes down to like the upper 50s, which that actually matters over time. So I don't really think that it actually is worth trading in my opinion. Now, of course, everyone's entitled to do whatever the fuck that they want. You're an adult. You're a goddamn adult, most likely, if you're viewing this content. So I'm just kind of sharing my opinions on this one. But ultimately, the range for the short-term timeframes here is pretty damn well set. We can see 59,600 to the upside versus this blue box right here, which we actually took up quite significantly from about $52,500 pivot, now up to about 55,500 on a daily, or 55,000 even on a 4-hour. Or sorry, actually no, it's going to be 54,500 on a 4-hour. It's about $1,000 delta between those as well, being that they are massively differential timeframes here. Anyways, so with that said, I look at anything within this range as just, more or less the same interpretation on the medium and higher term timeframes. However, test back down to the bottom side of the range, which would be about 55,500 or 56,000 bucks, is, more or less at least first pass likely to produce another higher low, also in line with the 2-spot 414 right here as well. And we could probably just even move up this blue box to that level, although I do like to keep it steady with the last prior low until that's fully met, and that's just the way that I trade. But some people who are more aggressive than that, they'll actually put on risk right around there. That's completely fine. But for myself, especially over a weekend, I'm not willing to do that. Anyways, if we peruse the lower term timeframes, let's see if what we have going on right now. We do see a little bit of bearish divergence coming off that last high right there. Again, not something that you would actually usually identify, but with Caretaker's RSI, I see a lot of these actually end up working out. Here's the thing, though. Could you say that that's already played out? I wouldn't say that this one's all that playable to begin with. About that. Well, there is $1,000 move there. So there's that little bit more than $1,000 move. It doesn't look like much because we're on log scaling because these numbers are so fucking big now. But fair enough. I suppose that is in there. 4-hour Stokes kind of flip flopping around in the bullish control zone. I don't really look at this as a signal or a non-signal. I look at this as a nothing right now. I look at this as a sideways market, more or less. I think the 4-hour RSI really gets this one well. As you can see, long-term, very good. Long-term, extremely good. Short-term, sideways. Sideways in a range, boring as fuck. And that's basically the truth right now, at least in my opinion. Volatility also cooling off here too, so I'd be looking for this one to kind of come back down somewhere around the teens, maybe even single digits, and that probably does set it up for the next major move, maybe later this week or somewhere in next week. Still think that Bitcoin has a little bit more time to kind of spend within this range. Anyways, 3 hour, what do we see right here? Same thing, actually. 3 hour Stochs are coming down right now. 3 hour RSI, flat as a fucking doorknob, or flat as a door. What is that saying? I don't know. Bi-hourly is actually coming down as well, rejecting the bullish control zone. So a little bit more downside in post short term, it looks like. If I did have to call things, do I think Bitcoin comes back down to like maybe low 57? Probably yes. But again, this is extremely short term time frame stuff. I wouldn't play this myself right here. I'm not interested in this sort of shit right here. Maybe back down around about 55.5, just because that is a nice daily level, or 55 even. Could look at that as something interesting. But for right now, no thank you, man. No thank you indeed. And we actually already even see HVP all the way down in single digits here as well. So we probably even do see a short-term move over the weekend, yes. But would I be looking for a break of even the short-term range, as we documented earlier, between hey fucker, come on, between this level and this level? Probably not. Honestly, probably not. Probably just be looking for tests there, a little bit of wick fishing, and it's likely a setup for the week to come, if anything. Looking at the hourly, same shit as well, actually coming all the way down. So we actually do see a lot of agreement between the low term timeframes. But again, the key is in the RSI right now for the overall trend. This is neutral as neutral gets, and long term it does have a bullish bias here, just based off of that. I mean, this is very constructive behavior, to be fair, especially as long as Bitcoin's even just using these downside moves to print higher lows, even on the low term timeframes, which is rather impressive. Anyways, moving on to the medium term timeframes, we do see that 12-hour Stochs nice and erect, rejecting the bearish control zone. So I do like that. This obviously correlates a little more with like the next few days of price action, not necessarily like today's price action. Still seeing the hidden bullish divergence kind of play off from this area right here on the 17th of March. Although that's that was kind of the move right there. So maybe maybe it's gone for a bit of a reset. But ultimately, very very similar reads here that we see on the lower term time frame. So I don't really have too much to add there as well. And if we go to the daily, what do we see right here? Daily's kind of cradling around, hidden bullish evidence on the other side. I'd say that one's kind of crawling its way back up. Daily Stochs I'd be looking at as a next as sort of like a next signal as well for a potential continuation. I want to see this one likely test somewhere around the edge of the bullish control zone and reject, going below and turn back up. If I see something like that, that's going to be a classic signal as well for continuation sooner rather than later, we'll call it. Anyways, buy daily, anything of note here? Nope, just seeing the same shit. 3-day looks like more same shit to me as well. Now I would say this about the 3-day. There is some pretty obvious stuff right here above last 3-day high, which is 60,176 on Mexico. I would be looking for continuation to our next medium term target, which I believe is actually 65,000 bucks, in line with the 3.272 right here. Nice little algo target. Confluence, and to the downside, actually wouldn't use the last 3-day low. I'd actually use this low right here, the 14th of March low on the 3-day, which is 53,264. I think it's actually the weekly low as well for this past trading week. Anyways, all of this again looks more or less fine to me. I think it's a little more obvious on CME too. This is a setup at a high level here. Momentum also is turning up. Hidden bullish evidence is playing out. Again, it is very aggressive, but the stair-stepping behavior where Bitcoin's had plenty of chances to already come to the downside, but didn't really, or at least when it did, it just put in higher lows. Again, this is more or less just good market dynamics going on right now, and I do favor this. Should also check out caretaker ranges right now, or whoops, wrong one. Here we go. We'll get to that one later, but caretaker ranges is what I refer to them as. This is the caretaker STC, by the way, in case you're not familiar with this one. 4-hour getting the range incredibly well here, and I'd more or less agree with this. Does show short-term momentum to the downside as long as we're below about 58,726, but ultimately I'd be looking at this range right here, this yellow ring right here to kind of get the range for the weekend. To the upside, just above 60,000 bucks. To the downside, just around 54,000 bucks. These, and this would be like a wick range, so to speak. Anyways, going back on over here, I did forget to mention this. We do in the lower term timeframes seem to be wedging ourselves into some sort of an ascending triangle right here. I've actually gone ahead and already done the measure move on this one, but keep in mind this is breaking kind of my rule in the sense that I don't really like to kind of put formations in there that haven't already put themselves in there. But, if we're just playing around with shit on a weekend because we're more or less bored, I'd be looking at something like this, coming in for our last few lows, obvious resolution above about 59.6 or 59.7, and 59.6 we'll call it, on a 4-hour closure, and your rising bottoms coming in right around the 2 spot 414 here at about 55, about almost 56,000 bucks actually. So fair enough on that one. If it does get resolved, it would have a measure move directly in line with the 3.272, which is just under 65,000 bucks. So I would be looking at that as an area of interest for the next leg to the upside, probably a short-term pullback from that region, maybe even a reversal fake out as well, as sometimes you do get not hunts, but actual traps within this region. Again, based off the higher term time frames, do I think that that's likely? No, I think a short-term pullback's likely, but not necessarily like a full-on trap is likely. But ultimately, again, I am mostly, I guess, bullish here, I suppose. What we should also do is we should check on the pi cycle top indicator, of which this one has been steadily coming down pretty damn aggressively this week. And what I would say about this is that because it is coming down pretty aggressively, almost down towards that critical area of about 80 on the differential for the percentage between current price action and the reverse function on this one. By the way, you can get this indicator for yourself if you want. It's just go on TradingView, type in caretaker reverse pi cycle something rather. I do believe I do have a video on it. Yes, I do have a video on it on judging the macro high. This is, still, crawling its way down, but still not fully an issue just yet until it gets below about 80. That's where I say, historically speaking, very, very problematic. And of course, below 75, there's like never been an instance in history where that's like reversed from there. And not put in a high relatively soon, usually within like a week, as a lot of the time, even less than that. So with that in mind, I still look at this as, still likely to continue its way upwards and onwards. But here's the thing. We actually will see this percentage go up if Bitcoin can accelerate to new highs faster than it did, the last period, the last period that we're governing right now. So it's a game of like momentum against momentum, which is actually a rather interesting concept. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, which I might do a video on later. But more importantly right now, all that we need to kind of know to interpret this is that, yes, this percentage can still go up, as a lot of people have been asking. It's just Bitcoin would need to increase the momentum in comparison to the past prior momentum. I mean, these are just two moving averages at the end of the day. And so if Bitcoin does accelerate further and further and further to the upside, it'd be the same thing as like, your 10 simple and your 21 exponential average over here, diverging more and more as trend gets more and more aggressive. Not as simple as that, but general concept does apply here. So with that in mind, it's still a little bit of a consideration, but if Bitcoin does break to the upside here, and it does have like another parabolic move, that percentage very likely does go up. So I still do think that Bitcoin's actually, potential to get into the 6 digits, maybe even this year. I do have a video on that as well. If we were to like look at what 80% away from current price action would be, that would be, where would we be in the 6 digits still? No, actually we wouldn't. Oh, this is very interesting right here. 77,250. So this has actually come down significantly now, like very, very significantly. So fair enough on that one. Fair enough. Bitcoin, does need to start rallying like sooner rather than later. Otherwise, this will be an inevitability. And party will very likely be over, at least if this signal does play out, historically speaking, which it has been perfect for the history of Bitcoin. Doesn't mean it's always going to be perfect. Referencing a nice concept from Nassim Taleb's book, Fooled by Randomness. But more importantly, it does give us an edge. And that's really the basis of that book. And something that I can really strongly recommend to anyone out there, not just if you're a trader, but if you're like a human being, it's probably going to be useful. And it's going to help interpreting, data like this, which a lot of people don't understand. And this is what a lot of the people who, I've seen this a lot. Like I had this friend in Chicago, right? I had this friend in Chicago, very, 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 very smart guy, very successful guy too. And he was very mathematically based, and that's fair enough. You can definitely make a living that way, but he thought that he was smarter than the market. He thought that he could actually predict price action. And while he could, a strong majority of the time, sometimes even 98% of the time for the data that he showed me, it only took a few times where his thesis was wrong, and he eventually blew out his count. And actually, I don't know if he went full on broke, but he was no longer trading anymore. And so what I'd say about that is that, referencing the concept in that book, it's like, yes, you can have a really strong model, but with fat tails involved, if essentially a black swan event, which can and will fucking happen, you need to be able to prepare for that. And that's why risk management is so fucking important. So I always kind of push back whenever I hear something like that, like someone's like figured out the market or something, because you can figure out the market a large majority of the time, yes. But you have to also remember there is randomness that does happen. And more importantly, on top of that randomness, there is just the market in general. Like it's not the same from day to day. It's different participants. It's different, it's completely different dynamics. So, you can't really solve that in that way. And that's why I do look at technical analysis, or more or less trading, as an art rather than a science. Not that like neither is not involved, but you have to kind of be able to combine both both, because there are going to be those unique situations where it will inevitably happen, and anyone who's traded like that before will be able to tell you. I mean, I used to be a fucking market maker, and I could tell you straight up, yeah, there's problems with the way that we price things. Yes, they work more often than not. Yes, they work the large majority of the time, but it's not perfect. And it's no secret that, you know, once every 10 years almost on the fucking clock, you see a major blow up in the economy. Maybe not a major blow up in the economy, but you see something, you know, like 2008, for example. You know, it happens once every decade, once every couple decades, historically speaking, and that is, well, due to that fact that, you know, the inflexibility can really cause these sort of major issues, and that references another Nassim Taleb concept with anti-fragility, which is an incredibly interesting concept as well. Now, I probably will get a comment on this because, like, someone's going to say Nassim Taleb's an asshole. Hey, look, I agree. I think Nassim Taleb is completely insufferable as a person. I would not endorse him as a person, as a thinker, as a philosopher. Absolutely, great stuff, and very, very important concepts. Again, not just for trading, although he is a trader himself, but just for life. You know, if you can understand these sorts of things, it'll give you a massive leg up just in the world and interpreting, you know, data sets like this. So with all that in mind, what are my points of failure for this right here? Well, you know, as we kind of already discussed, for the short term range, you know, more or less steady here. 59.60 upside versus about 56 to the downside for the short term. Below 56, Bitcoin does start to lose its higher low structure, and I would be looking for a move all the way down to our 4-hour 272 right here at about 54.5, we'll call it. That's where this starts to morph into a little more short-term bearish. Yes, I'd be looking for a bounce off this level on the first pass. However, that bounce very likely does fail, and Bitcoin does come back down and test towards the lower $50,000 region. Definitely possible. Not necessarily looking for that, but that would be mediated again by this pivot right here on a medium-term time frame. Correlated with a medium-term time frame. And I'd be able to judge, and I'd feel comfortable judging that on a 4-hour closure below this region, maybe even a 2-hour as well. Yeah, you could probably use a 2-hour below that region. Anyways, on the higher term timeframes, however, where do your rise and lows stop coming in? Well, it's actually pretty damn easy here too. 55.5 on a daily closure, and that actually would start to imply, movements back down somewhere around the 55 here, which is just below $50,000, and below, of course, our last macro low, which is now on the weekly, this low right here at about 44.5, about $45,000. Then, you know, I would actually start to get macro bearish. Once again, you have an official reversal, and clean target would be actually, you know, $37,000 to $35,000. So fair enough. You know, am I looking for any of this stuff to happen? No, but these are the conditions for looking for these major shifts in market sentiment. Again, referencing those concepts, incredibly fucking important stuff to understand. Until that stuff happens, though, just more or less bullish, especially over the next few weeks here. Probably looking for, you know, deeper 6,000 targets to get hit. And should I wrap this bitch up now? I think I actually won't even wrap up this bitch, because this video's been more or less just straight and dry and narrow here. We can take a quick look at Ethereum. Let's see, where's my butyrols? 1823. Ethereum actually looks a little bit better in the short-term timeframes, to be fair. Right in the 21 on the daily, you know, pretty damn classic stuff right here. Daily RSI tells a story. Daily Stokes are going to confuse you, because that is that I actually look at that as bullish reset, to be fair. 12-hour Stokes a little bit more obvious here with the rejection of the bearish controls and twisting back up, plus hidden bullish divergence on the 12-hour RSI. I think this one actually is gearing up for a move probably sooner rather than later, back around that $1,900 pivot. However, you know, very similar to Bitcoin, or I guess I don't even really have this one charted out, but very similar to Bitcoin here. You know, you have pretty obvious ranges. Breakout to new all-time highs above this area right here, 1930, and, you know, could still be looking at targets towards, I think it was like $2,300. We could take a nice extension from this region as well, now that we have a pretty obvious base coming in here. And let's see what we got. Yeah, so big areas of interest right around here. Actually, the deeper 2000s region is where I'd be looking towards. 2,800 would be like a big target, with areas of interest right around 2,500-ish region. So that's what I'd be looking for. This is, you know, again, kind of shaping up to be a reaccumulation at a high level. Could it come back down and scrape the 55 around the 382? Yeah, it could very easily do that. That would still just be a higher low here, and you'd be looking at something like this, like an ascending triangle, right? So I do still think that has some time. If it comes back down to this level right here, I'd look at this as an opportunity on the first pass. This also does break right here. I'd be looking for an extension all the way down to 1,400, and this is going to turn into very likely a bearish structure long term. But is that my first, interpretation of this? No. Again, referencing those concepts that we just spoke about in Nassim Taleb's book, very fucking important stuff. So So with all of that in mind, I do I do like this one more or less long term, even short term or medium term, I guess. 12-hour looks fine to me. In fact, 12-hour looks like it wants to have another try to the upside, and 4-hour same thing here too. Actually, HVP being incredibly low does bode well for this one actually having a resolution relatively soon. We can even see that this one wedging itself into this area, probably even has a resolution early this next coming week. I would be looking at 22nd to 24th region as a very strong likelihood of actually moving outside of this range. And in this case, the range on the 4 would be either above 1920, generating those next upside targets, or below the low side of the structure, which is about 1750, which would imply a move back down to about 1620-ish region. Again, all of these related to each other and pretty damn obvious here. So with all that said, I do think that it's going to be time for me to wrap up this video. I don't want to be too long. And you know what? I think with all of that said, I would like to wish you well once again. I'd like to wish you the best. Have a nice Saturday in your life. I'll be trying to pilot the skies in my VR situation a little bit later. Looking forward to that. Anyways, with that said, take care. I salute you and see you soon.